Hello, everybody. You are now listening to the Overflow
And
Podcast.
we are back. Hello, everybody. How you doing? It's cold out here because I'm outside. Welcome to this week's episode of the Overflow Podcast. As always, I am Joaquin.
And I'm
And,
Jim. I
and
am
we
Jim.
here because what we do. We got nothing else going on. Today I decided to do it outside because it was warmer, but now it's getting colder. So we got to get done because my toes are freezing. And unfortunately, I got to go to work tomorrow. Boo-hoo-hoo me. So, as always, what up, Jay? What's going on with you? What you been up to?
Chilling, man, chilling. You know, working on everything that I spoke about 2 weeks ago. So, just stuff. In this entrepreneurship season that I'm in.
Oh, Pastor J is doing Pastor J things. All right, we got you.
That's Jay doing Pastor J things, and then just doing J things. Doing legacy things. The the latest in this chapter. So I convinced, well, not I convinced. I talked to Magda about maybe starting to write some things down, maybe do some videos about us, doing this whole trip, right? This whole legacy road to legacy thing. So
Right.
that might come in the future. But newest thing is I had a meeting yesterday about the whole nonprofit thing
All right.
and how to pursue that and how that helps. And now it sounds like we're officially going to start going through the process of being licensed through Foursquare. And the best thing about that, Joaquin, is that they license me, I license you, we're all licensed.
Oh, interesting. I don't need that license. I'm not applying. Um, you can't make me that. Wow, that's what's up. That's dope.
Which Magda pushed back on. Magda pushed back on. She's
I
like,
bet.
hold on a minute. License? I'm not here to be licensed. I'm not here to be pastora. I'm here to be pastor's wife. I support, I help, or whatever, but I'm not looking to be a pastor. Dude, it was interesting to watch. Then say, yeah, we need you guys, and we'll get both of you licensed. She was like, oh, hold on a minute. And to watch like their reaction to that. Like, and I'm sitting right next to her, just cracking up.
Right.
Like just cracking up because it was almost like, oh, wait a minute. So you don't want to be a pastor? She's like, I'm a pastor's wife. Help me, support him, be here for him, cover, pray, all that stuff. But I'm not looking to be licensed. I don't need to be licensed, right? Like, no, you don't need to be. So okay, then I'm good.
Yeah. That's the thing, though, right? That's funny, right? Because that's straight out of kind of that charismatic side of the faith, right? Where it's like the husband and wife both get licensed. They're both pastors or whatever, and
Right.
you know,
Now, I understand why they want us both to go through like the course and whatever, because even if I'm the pastor, we're one, and whatever struggle or whatever I have, like she'll be affected as well. Like our home will be affected as well. But she was like, okay, I get that. But that doesn't mean that I got to be a pastor, right? I don't have to be a pastor. I don't need
right.
the license. Like Jay, she was like, Jay's the one, he's got the calling and he's got the degree, he's got the theology degree or whatever. So I'm his wife, and I know what the Bible says about being his wife and supporting him, but I don't need a license for that. And I was like, well, actually, you do. Like we got the marriage license. but the funny thing was, like the reaction,
Right.
the reaction that the people had to Magda, like pushing away and pushing back on the getting licensed thing. So
Right.
it was one of those things where I wish I was recording. I wish I was recording
Yeah,
the
yeah,
Zoom call.
yeah. That's a new thing, man. That really is, right? It seems to be a new thing, kind of generally speaking. By having two people licensed or whatever. That's hilarious.
Yeah,
That's
yeah. Like it was one of those things that when I'm laughing, and after everything, I was like, man, I wish Quinito was here so he could see how like adamant you were in pushing back, but more so he could see their faces because it was like it was almost like this is the first time we hear this, we get this
Yeah.
pushback. Like,
It, they're probably used to the wife being the most excited about getting licensed, right? Completely. Yeah, they're probably, oh yes, I can't wait to get licensed, and they're like, the husband's like, yeah, that's cool, that's cool.
Yeah, yeah,
yeah. Pastor Jay starting out this new journey, a couple of years. Pastor Jay's Foursquare Church. That's what it's going to be called. Pastor Jay's Foursquare Church in Akron.
It's going to be church. It's going to be called Iglesia Cuadrangular. You got to stress that at the end. Cuadrangular.
It's like, yo, this dude got bubbles in his mouth. That's what's up.
I like the idea of, so like we talked about this, right? We're going through this whole thing, which is weird. Like we're going through church planting and licensing in a pandemic where they're trying to keep churches closed. But hey, in another lifetime, I was known also as the rebel leader. So, but it's interesting, and through this all, I'm just like, yo, like, whatever it is, whatever it takes. And we were talking, a lot of other people that are in the course with us, right, doing this with us. I think they're like 15, 16 couples. They know like the end answer, right? So they know where they're gonna go to plant, whether it's God-led or organizational leading, right? They know where they're going. Some of them have gone and have moved to this place and already establishing themselves in the community and stuff like that, right? And when it comes to us, we're like, we don't know where we're going. We don't know where God is sending us. We know that this is something that needs to be done. We don't know where it's going to happen. So we don't know if it's here, if it's somewhere else, if it's in another country. We don't know where God is going to send us. We just know that he's telling us to do this. And talking about that organization isn't like, oh, well, let's lead you. Oh, well, let's look at where we need you, right? It's like, hey, we're here, we're with you. We're here for the journey too, right? We're gonna be sure that you're prepared and you're ready so that when God finally reveals it to you, like you're going with all the tools and all the backup and all everything necessary, right? So I think that's dope, right? Because not a lot of organizations will be like that. They would be like, hey, well, we need people here. Go here, right? Or, oh, well, you don't know yet that.
Right, which is not a bad thing. I think we've gotten a little too tied into where quote unquote
the Abrahamic covenant.
The what?
The Abrahamic covenant. Go to a place where I will lead you.
Yeah, we got so. Yeah, I mean, but that's so true because whenever you talk, and this is right across, like, the board in Christendom, right? Because it's kind of like God's called me to ministry. Why? Or where's God called? Well, God, I feel God's calling me here. I feel God's calling me there, and it's like, well, why not? If you feel that God's called you, but then if you're within this organization that is doing things the right way, maybe they have where guys where your skills will fit to. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. I think we've got.
If they tell us, hey, Jay, you're bilingual, you're Spanish, Spanish and English, and your wife being Polish, there's this city in this state that has as it just so happens, they have like a large Latino and a growing Polish population, right? We would love it if you consider going there, right? And Magda and I were just like, hey, let's go for a weekend and check it out, right?
That would be a very strange city, but yes.
That very strange city of how Manchow said, a city of dumb criminals. Um, but like I'm just saying, like if that would have happened, right, we wouldn't be against that, right? Okay, well, because it's still for the same mission, right? It's still for the
Right.
same mission, and the mission is, reaching people for the kingdom, right? So
Right.
if God is going to send us, then we're going to go where God send us. But if the organization that we're partnering with tells us,
Right.
hey, can you consider this place? Then we will consider said
Right.
place, right? Like
Right. And what's
that's not something that
yeah.
we're against. Right? And I
Yeah,
learned
and what's
I learned
nice
that
about
lesson.
that.
Say again.
Well, no, I'm saying the nice thing about that too is that you're allowing this organization or these group of people, you're also allowing them to see what your skills are and to be able to take those skills and translate them to a place where, right, you're going to be able to do kingdom work, you
Right.
know, uh, I want to say efficiently, that's not the right word, but where it'll be a better mix of, or a connection of how you can do kingdom work there, um, instead of, you know, whatever, like, oh, I'd love to go to Florida, yeah, that's where God's
Or,
calling
or
me to
not,
Florida.
or not doing it because the donkey didn't speak, right? Because a lot of us like to get super spiritually deep when sometimes it's not that deep, right?
Right.
If it was a secular position and it was like, hey, Jay, we have an art director position open in Nevada, and it's gonna pay $150,000 a year for the first year, and then whatever, right? I'm like, yo, baby, we're moving to Nevada. Right?
Yeah, it's like
But it's
yeah, here's
like,
we're
right?
done, we're out.
When it comes to like church or organizations, say, hey, there's a need for a pastor in Nevada. Oh man,
I gotta pray about
I
it.
gotta I gotta pray about it. See, that's what God really wants from me because I don't want to go to Nevada.
Right, right, right. Or
Right?
even like you were saying earlier, or even like you were saying earlier, like, oh well, I'm bilingual, so I should be in a place where that's gonna be helpful. And you know, while that makes sense, right? And on a kind of on one level, but what if on another level, that's not where right? That's not where you're supposed to be. And
Right.
being open, right? And
To
being
be
open,
honest, I was asked, would you do service in Spanish? Right? Like, would you have service in Spanish in your church plan? And like my answer was fast, right? My answer was fast. If if there's a need for it,
right?
right? Like there's a need for it, yes. Right? If I have to because there's a need, yes. But I'm bicultural, meaning that I was born and raised in the States, New York specifically, while my parents are Puerto Rican. So for me, like yourself, English is my first language,
Right.
right? English was my first language, not Spanish, and then I learned English, right? English, and then I learned Spanish, right?
Right.
So, you know, but I do know Spanish. So if I had to, right, if there was a great need and I had to, of course, because I'm gonna do what I have to do for the Lord. And like even with Magda, right? Magda doesn't want to do anything, whatever. And there was a growing Polish population, and they started going to our church because they heard that the pastor's wife was Polish, right? Well, baby, it's time for you to start a Polish home group, or if they want to meet at the church, it's time for you to start a Polish service for them, right? And start teaching. And let's go. Let's make it happen. Because let's say that the Lord moves us to Poland, right? Until I learn that hard, super difficult language, right?
Right.
She's the one that's gonna have to be at the forefront of things, right? Even if she's translating for me, right? It's still gonna be everything is gonna have to go through her until I learn that language. If I learn that language,
Right.
right? I mean, so yeah, and it's funny because I learned that early on, like I think when I was 12 years old, we went to the Dominican Republic on a mission trip, My
Right.
mom, my dad, my little sister, and I. And there was this pastor, puffed up, full of himself, who said that he was there because God had told him that he had to be there, right? El Señor me llamó para estar aquí con ustedes en la República Dominicana, whatever, right? Dude, like 2 days later, he was on a plane back to the States because the mission field is real,
Right.
right? The mission field is real. And when he saw that that we had to bathe in the same river where they bathe their animals or where they took the animals to drink, and that was the same water that they used to boil so they could use for drinking and for cooking. Dude was like, "Yeah, this ain't it. This ain't,
Right.
like, ain't it." So
They
yeah,
call me Santo Domingo, not to the campo.
right. Come me to the capital. I want to be a mission. I want to be on the mission field, but sleeping at a 3 or 4 star hotel, and then just somebody and get a driver to drive me to these places just so I can preach and leave. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's
that's like when I was in college and the college groups would go do the summer trips and summer mission trips, and the ones that always got filled up quick, right, were the ones to like Panama City or the beach, right, somewhere. Those were the ones that always got filled up quick. Um, I mean, and it's
I love
human
it.
nature.
You gotta love it. Yeah,
Yeah, I mean,
yeah.
it's human nature, and I guess it's immaturity too, right? To some of it, definitely.
And it's also uh uh a focus correction that's needed, right? It's also like bad perspective, right?
Right,
So there are a lot of right now because of social media, there are platforms for certain people to become quote unquote Christian celebrities. But like we mentioned last week, right? There have always been Christian celebrities. Just they've been more just for more in the local church rather than on the larger scale because of social media now.
right,
And so this guy was like revered by everybody, and so he went on that so he went on that mission trip. And then so it's funny because after the mission trip, us as a family, because there were a lot of us there, but us as a family, we went from DR to PR, right? And I remember my dad being like mixed. Like he didn't know if he was happy, like if he was proud of me. He was proud of me and pissed at me, right? Because you know how Latinos are for family vacations, they buy clothes for vacation, right?
right,
So we knew that we were going to Puerto Rico after the mission trip. So of course I had new clothes. Right? I had like new sneakers, new clothes, or whatever. But since we went to the mission trip first, right? I went to Puerto Rico and with an empty suitcase,
right,
with an empty suitcase, and I remember having like some kids cut off shorts and some kids fishnet t-shirt, right? Because it was that deep. I gave away everything I had because I knew that I can easily get more for mommy and papi, and I had stuff at home because this was vacation clothes, right?
right.
And like dad, papi was like mad and proud, like mad and proud, like I would have punished you because those were new clothes, but like I'm proud of you because it's like you gave what you had away to the needy, but
Right.
like next time, no new clothes for vacation, which is something I never understood anyway. Like, why are you buying me vacation clothes if I'm going to Puerto Rico to be in the campo, riding horses and like being
Yeah.
in the dirt, right? I never understood that, but yeah, it's and maybe we can use that. We can talk about that on an episode of the Overflow, right? Because the call is the call, but right, the mission is the mission, and the
Right.
mission they all go hand in hand, but the mission was first, right? To go out into all the world, preaching, making disciples and all that. So the mission comes first. If you feel called to something, it goes with the mission. So if you were told to go out into all the world, right? If God leads you and he impresses upon you where to go, then dope. But if you're connected to do work with a Christian organization that sends people out, right? That's
Right.
still mission. And the
Yeah.
call is always like under the mission, right?
Right. Right.
So
Because you're calling us to preach the gospel. Why does it matter where you preach the gospel? Right? Shouldn't it be, you just preaching the gospel? It's not,
right.
and I think I think that's the problem. We've been suckered into thinking that we need to know where we're going, right? I need to know where I'm going. I need to know that I'm going there. And it's like, eh, do you? Do you really?
Yeah, that's that's what I'm saying. Like, it has to be under the Abrahamic covenant, because when God called Abram out of Ur, he didn't tell him where he was going. He was like, take your
Right.
family and your belongings and go to a place where I will show you. Right. So while he's there
And then,
walking,
yeah, remember then Paul would talk about, hey, I'm going to send you these two dudes. I'm going to send you
right,
these guys.
I'm gonna send you Apollo, I'm gonna
Right.
send you Barnabas and Timothy, right?
So,
And John Mark.
yeah, so Apollo's over there just chilling, thinking, "Ooh, I'm gonna go to Rome," and it's like, okay, Apollo, I need you to go to this backwater town. That's that's where you gotta go. Apollo's thinking like, "Oh man,
Right? But
okay,"
he went,
but
right?
he went
But he
right.
went
Think, like,
because he
"Oh
was
man,"
told, hey, there's
and
a
I
need.
think
There's a need in this city, in this town, to hear about Jesus, and that's where I'm sending you.
right, and I
Like,
and I think that's funny, though, right? I think that's funny. I think that's what triggered when like the whole idea of, well, because you have a skill set, that means you need to go to where you can use that skill set. And it's almost backwards, right? Almost,
right.
right? It's almost like, well, no, it's great that you have this skill set, but um, your grace isn't sufficient for me when you can fall back on your skill set, right? Sometimes you gotta go outside of your skill set, and that's what you got to do. And I think we tend to want to look to serve God within our skill set.
Well, I think that well, first of all, I think that this is where we're gonna land for this episode.
Yeah,
Um,
it's
right?
just like
But
speaking, right?
but I think that the skill set, you have a certain skill set, and that skill set doesn't doesn't need a specific zip code or city or location for you to use, right?
Right,
So let's say, like, secularly, I'm a designer, right? As a designer, especially in today's remote employment world, right? I can go anywhere, right?
right,
Anywhere, and I can design for anybody, right? Even if I don't speak the language, like, I can still design anywhere, right? Any country around the world, whatever. I do the design, somebody else can add the copy, or they can give me the copy, right? And I can add it to my design. It's like when I worked at Cox Media, I was art director over the Spanish paper, but the bulk of my designers were in India,
right.
right? So I would give them the images, tell them how I want the layout, and give them the copy. And without knowing Spanish, they would design the ad or design the page for me. And if there was some grammatical stuff or whatever, sometimes they would add the instructions that I would put in along with the copy. So I would
Right.
have to do some editing and some fixing there. But they still design the ad and just put in all the Spanish copy. So, like, I can do that anywhere. So my skill set is anywhere, right? My degree's in theology. So, and I'm an apologist at heart. So I can preach the gospel, I can evangelize anywhere,
Right.
right? Anywhere, right? If it's like spiritual skill set, I can pray for people anywhere. I remember one of the times, and I think you were there with us, the first time that Magda ever got up to do ministry with me, she was praying for people in Polish, right? Like, she asked me, can I pray for people? Like, if I pray for people, can I pray for them? So, of course. right? But I pray in Polish. Can I pray in Polish? Of course, right? And don't worry about it. It's a Spanish charismatic church. They'll probably just think that you're speaking in tongues, right?
Anyway, what do they know?
Right? Which technically you are, right? But those things can be done anyway. That's how the gospel was spread, right? If you look at biblically, like a Bible map of how the world was then to now, you can see that Paul went to Turkey, went to like Asia. It was like in all these places. You look at like his the map of his mission trips, mission trips, with a backpack. You know what I mean? So like the again the mission, which is the Great Commission, supersedes the calling. Like the calling is always under the mission, right? Or the commission, right? It always fall. It has to line up, but it has to fall under the go out into all the world and create disciples, teaching them what I have taught you, baptizing in the name of the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit. And then through Jerusalem, what is it? Jerusalem, Samaria, Judea, and all the world. Right? So,
Yeah.
So that so that's the thing, and a lot, and you're right, like, and it's across the board because you were raised Baptist, I was raised charismatic, right? But there are a lot of things that are taught wrong across the board, right? So a lot of like one of those things like, oh well, if you're called to that, or if you're called to this area, called to that area, and it's not to say that the Lord won't call you or lead you to a certain area, but it is also to say that sometimes the organization or the church that you are connected to and doing work for anyway will ask you to plant in this specific area,
Right.
and city, and this state, and in this country, right? It could be,
Right.
and it's not something that you would have to say, oh no, well, I don't feel called. I don't feel called to that city. Right? Well, what city do you feel called to? I don't know. I'm still waiting for
God
God to tell me. Where again, if it was your job saying, "Hey, we would love if you fill this position in this city, in this area." Wow. Hey, yeah, that's awesome. Thank you for considering me.
Yep.
Right?
Yep. I'm in.
And
Yeah.
why?
And I think, was that?
No, go ahead.
Oh no, yeah. No, I mean, and that was funny. That I just think of like all the different things when people talk about, they feel, oh, God called me to this or God's called me to that, and it's funny because I was just thinking how, like, Foursquare doesn't really have, from what you've told me, doesn't really have like full-time pastors, right? It's all very like bivocational,
Bivocational, yeah.
like work, right? But it's funny how in how we talk about, oh, God's called me to X, but it's got to be like full-time, right? It's like this weird, God's called me to, one that's easy to poke at, right? God's called me to like worship ministry, right? And it's like, oh, okay, well, that's cool. Hey, I need to worship, because this has happened to me, right? Yo, I need to worship, right? I need a worship pastor. I need somebody to lead worship for my youth group, like every week. Oh, I gotta pray about that. What? Then God called you. Then God called you to worship ministry. They called you to lead worship. Like, why? I'm giving you an opportunity to follow that calling. And it's like, okay, wait. So the God called you. Oh, I get it, because I got 6, right? God didn't call you to that. God called you to lead worship at the big church with the big youth group. That's
or God didn't call you to lead worship for the youth ministry because you want to lead worship at the big church on a Sunday with all the lights and all the people.
And because you want to release that worship EP you got, and those 6 kids in the youth group ain't go, they'll buy it, but that'll be it, right? That's as far as it's gonna go, right?
It's funny, right? Because I was telling somebody in the church planting Zoom meeting, I was telling somebody, yo, like, to be honest with you, I didn't know that there were paid ministry positions or paid pastor positions, like whatever, until I moved to Georgia. Like my whole life, I thought everything was bivocational. Right? My
Right.
grandma was a pastor. She was also a social worker, right? Social worker by day, pastor by night, right? My pastor in New York, he started first. He was a cab driver when he first planted, and then he worked in the hospital and he did other things, right? So every position I've held, I worked, right? And
Right.
even I don't know if I told you this, but even when mom started going to VCC, they asked her if she wanted to take over children's ministry, right? To run children's ministry, since, like I told them, she used to do that back home, and she was a teacher in New York City for 30 plus years, right? And then when they she was like, oh wow, like that would be cool, like I love it here, whatever. And what turned my mom off was when they offered her money for it, right? When they offered to pay her, like to cut her salary and whatever, she was like, paycheck, salary? It's like, you don't pay me to do the Lord's work. It's like I do that because I love God, and I love like teaching kids about who God is, not to get paid. And then like she was like pissed about that. She was like, what is that? What kind of nonsense is that? I'm like, well, mom, you are retired, so it's like a little stipend. Like you put gas in your car, right?
Yeah.
Your groceries, you're on a you're retired, it's like you only have this amount of money, so now you got this little extra. It's a good thing.
Yeah, just like, mom, think of it as la ofrenda, right? The that you take for the guy that came to preach, right? You take a little ofrenda to help him out. That's the same thing.
I should have warned them and told them, hey, we're gonna give it a love offering. I think Jay calls it an ofrenda, an ofrenda. So I should have warned them, because that really like irked her. That irked her. That irked her like when she first saw me walking into the church with a cup of coffee.
Right. But then you got the opposite, right? You get people that will be like, "Oh, I'd love to do that. How much you gonna pay me?"
Right.
And it's like, oh,
I remember when I was youth pastor for PC, for Hebron, and I was under AG, and I went to a sectional meeting, and dude, like these other youth pastors were there talking about their pastoral career, and how they're just doing the whole youth pastor thing for a while so they could be promoted to be like senior pastor of a church. And I was like, hold on a minute. First of all, you guys get paid?
Charles, you got some explaining to do.
Wait a minute. First, you guys get a paycheck for this? Hold on a minute. And then after
Right,
that,
right.
hearing, like rock star pastor status, right? They're like, yeah, I'm just gonna do this for 3 years so I can get a promotion and get my own church. I'm like, what am I hearing right now? Like I didn't know that existed, again, until I moved to Georgia.
Yeah, I had done interviews where they asked me that. They were like, "Do you see youth ministry as a stepping stone to becoming a pastor? Like, how long do you see yourself doing youth ministry?" And I was like, I mean, at the time, I was like, forever. I don't. I mean, I had a youth pastor that he just retired. Not, I think he retired a couple years back or a year or so ago, as a youth pastor. Like he was like, I have no interest in being a pastor. I just want to work with youth. I want to work with kids. And that was his whole career.
Being a youth pastor is harder.
No doubt. It is harder.
It's a lot harder. Being a youth pastor is a lot harder. You have to work with kids and their parents.
Yeah.
Right? And sometimes
I'm not gonna say it's harder. It's that they both have their challenges.
And sometimes it's harder because you have to deal with parents for their kids.
for their kids. Now, if you're at a big church, like a mega church, being pastor is easy. Is the easiest job because you ain't got to deal with nobody.
Super easy.
You
Super
know,
easy.
and
But
if you got to
I was
set
gonna
up
say,
like
yeah, it's
Was
cush. It's a at a mega church. It's a cush position,
yes,
right?
especially
And
if you got to set up.
and the budget. You got a budget.
Yo, especially if you get it set up like Hillsong, New York. You got a green room with like, you know, like catered food, change of clothes. I mean, come on, man. What? I got to do with nobody.
You get a budget to work with, and a black card, right? So you could use.
Yeah, or
But
sign
no,
me up.
but yeah, for real, right? But keeping getting a little serious for all things, right?
Mhm.
There are times, right? So when when Jesus sent the disciples out, he sent them two by two,
Right.
and he just sent them out, right? He just sent them out. When you hear the Great Commission, when you read the Great Commission, right? Jesus isn't saying, I'm gonna tell you where to go, and then you're gonna go and you're gonna do the work, right? Jesus is telling us to go into the world, right, and create
Right.
disciples everywhere. Create disciples, right? Pray without ceasing. There are things in Scripture, right? When Paul got up and went, he just got up and went, and
Right.
where he landed, he set up shop and he preached, and he got beat up, he got killed, he got kicked out, and he would get back up, go back inside, set
He
up
got killed.
shop.
Get back. The Lazarus
Then
pit.
he
Right.
did the Lazarus pit. No, there was a time that he did like he he died for a couple minutes. Um, right? But the thing is that now I think it's more Western culture, right? Where we're a little pampered,
Right.
right? We're a little pampered, and we have things like mega churches, and we have things like budgets, right? And we have things like celebrity pastors and stuff that that brings to mind, well, my worth is this, or I
Right.
will do that only for this, or even the opportunistic side where I will go only if I get whatever, or in 3 years I can do whatever, right? And that's not Bible, man. Like that's not Bible. That's not anywhere in the Bible. Nowhere in the Bible, right? Read Fox's Book of Martyrs, and you see what the payment was for the disciples
Right.
and for other leaders of the faith back in the day. I think right now it's too cush. I think right now we have mission trips. We get mission trips, right? Where the mission field is a major city, and you're staying at a 3-star hotel. Like, that's a struggle, right? You know what I'm
Right.
saying? And then, and
Once again,
everything is done on social media where it's like, oh, I'm on the mission to feed this child. Look at me. Mission trip. Mission trip 2021. Right. And it's redonkulous because
and
the,
I'll say this.
the heart is in the wrong place, and that's not really the call. That's just entertainment. Like, let's be real. That's entertainment and or vacation paid by other people.
Right. I mean, and I'll be a little easier on some of that. Some of that. I do get it. I mean, I've been on trips where the bulk of it was we spent at this children's home, right? And the last night was at a nicer place, and we ate like a nicer meal. And the next day we got on our planes and left.
I mean, that's cool.
Right.
I'm good with that.
I mean, there is, I remember one time listening to these kids talk about this mission trip, and they were like, "Yeah, these people are so happy. These people are so happy not having anything," and I remember it. I remember at the time it kind of bothered me, right? Because I was like, "Wow, it's a weird way of phrasing it. Like I know they didn't mean it in a negative, necessarily in a bad way, but I think that yeah, we do get kind of caught up in well, that's uh, I'm here comfortable. That's not that's those people. Those people are happy not having anything. I can't be. It's almost like the young ruler, right? It's like, oh, so give everything up. Nah, well, I mean, come on. I'm
Oh,
just
come
saying.
on, just taking
Yeah,
things to an
most people,
extreme, right?
most people.
Oh, that's too
No,
radical. Ah.
I mean, we are. I mean, as far as ministry stuff, I mean, we are. We've been warped, right? Because we think that I think, we always talk about, I can't think of the actual scripture, but it goes, like, give was it give a pastor his worth, or give the something his worth, or maybe I'm
The laborer is worth his salary.
worth his salary. I think they use that a lot for pastors, right? And it's like, but then if you look, Paul kind of worked his hands a little bit, right, to support himself. He didn't just, yeah, he was given, and right, he would thank people. No, thanks for what you've sent,
Right.
right? But it wasn't an expectation, and I think we've come to this place, and you're right, and I don't know if it's just Western. I think I feel like it's probably leaked itself out all over the place now, but um that's this idea that, well, if I'm a pastor, I'm worth my wages, right? So you should support me. um and then it's like, I remember, one of the complaints, right, that people have about kind of these bigger churches, right, is that, well, that pastor never meets anybody, right? When my dad was a pastor, he was a pastor at a small church. On Mondays was visitation days. On Tuesdays he'd go visit, the sick members. On Wednesday, and my dad was Bible.
I don't know of any pastors that do it anymore. I remember when I was in Massachusetts, I used to go to Massachusetts all the time back in the day. And the church and the pastors that I used to help used to take me with them on like visitations. Right? He
Right.
would go to the houses of different people that called me because they needed prayer or they needed help with something. And I would go with them and we would go and we would pray for the people. We would do some ministry work, visit. Hey, you just want to know how you were doing. If you need anything, we would go to the supermarket for them and pick up, like, they were older and they couldn't get out. And I remember my grandmother, I used to go with her on weekends. And this is Puerto Rico. And, a lot of it is mountainous and hills. And we used to walk up these hills, right?
Right.
With these bags of groceries for like the older people who lived in the jungle and couldn't come out, like to go and couldn't drive or just were too old or too elderly and too sick. And she would go and she would make them food and feed them. And I'm just like sitting there waiting, right? To then take up the bags and go to the next house or whatever, like,
Right.
all by foot. I don't know of people or churches that still do that, like here.
Yeah. Yeah, they're there. They're just the smaller churches. I mean, that's just the reality, right? They're the smaller churches. It's almost like, well, all right, pastor, if we're paying you what you're worth, then you gotta stop, punching the clock in a little bit here, bruh.
So you start doing some work,
You
right?
know,
So
think,
check this out. So we were
yeah,
saying how, the Great Commission, Matthew 28, 19, 20, therefore go and make disciples of all nations, baptizing them in the name of the Father and the Son and the Holy Spirit, and teaching them to obey everything I have commanded you, right? And surely I'm with you until the end of the age, right? So that's the Great Commission, right? And then in Acts 13:47, it says, whoop, whoop, hold on a minute. Excuse me, please. It says, for so the Lord has commanded us, saying, I have made you a light for the Gentiles, that you might bring salvation to the ends of the earth. Right? And then we keep on. Mark, uh, uh, like a resonation of the Great Commission. Go into all the world and preach the gospel to all creation. Isaiah 6:8. Then I heard the voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send and who will go for us? And he said, and I said, here am I, send me. First Chronicles 16:24, declare his glory among the nations, his marvelous deeds among all peoples. Right? So these are just like little verses, just a few verses to show
right,
you that the calling falls under the mission,
the
right?
mission.
Isaiah heard a voice of the Lord saying, whom shall I send and who shall go for us? That's the mission, right? And I said, here I am, send me. That's the call, right? So the calling, yes. Do I believe that God, or do we believe that God has a calling for everybody, right? Yes, right? Right? We believe that there's a calling on the life of every believer to at least like, go out and do the Great Commission in whatever, however manner that you can do it. Not everybody does the same thing, and those that do the same thing don't do the same thing the same way. I hope you caught up with that.
Right.
Right. But the call must always fall under the mission, right? You can't put the call over the mission because then you're just like you're guy at the Siri. You're just the guy, right? You're just the guy without a plan, right? You're a guy without a plan, right? And the plan is in the mission to go into the world and make disciples of every nation, baptized in the name of the Father, Son, and the Holy Spirit, and teaching everything that Jesus taught us, right?
Right.
And sometimes we want to put stipulations to the mission, or we want to put a price tag to the mission, right? But there is no price tag. There are no stipulations except for the ones that are mentioned, that Jesus himself mentioned when he stated the Great Commission. Right. So we were gonna speak about something else. I guess we could push it or just keep it in the cabinet. Keep it in the cabinet for another time. Because this obviously took precedence because inspired by the fact that that we are going through this thing for church planting and all that. But like just because like I planted a church before. I've done ministry since I was like 16, 17, right? Really fully in since I've been 18. Joaquin also, we've been youth pastors. We've done outreach. Like together we've done outreach. We've gone on evangelism tours. Like we've done these things like always. And we've never done them for money or never turned down an opportunity to go out and preach the gospel or share Jesus because there was no money or because the money that was offered, we didn't deem it worthy enough. Right. Because yes, we are called to preach. We've both been pastors. I feel more called to the pastorship than Joaquin does. Right. But that's not to say that if he has to preach somewhere, if I ask him to come with me to help me do ministry somewhere, he's going to say no, right? Because the mission is the most important thing that we have as believers. No matter, there are 5 ministries. If you don't feel that you fall or you have a call to one of those ministries, even without a calling, the mission still stands, right? And the mission is to everybody. When the Ethiopian asked Philip, well, here's some water, right? Why can't I get baptized now? Right? All Philip had to say was, who says you can't? Like, let's go. Right? And Philip baptized the Ethiopian, right? Yeah, like I'm getting fired up, but it's late. But right, this isn't to deter anyone. This is to inspire you. It should inspire you because if you feel that God is calling you to something, if you feel God is calling you to preach, to teach, whatever it is that fall under the fivefold ministry, just do it. Do it because whatever your calling is, you do it under the plan, and the plan is the mission. So you do it with the mission in mind, and God will be with you, as He said. He will be with you always, even to the end of the age. Right. So,
and remember, the only thing I'm going to add to that is that your calling is not your vocation. All right, your calling is not your vocation. Now, can your vocation ultimately involve your calling? Yes, but your calling is not your vocation, and I think that we all need to start realizing that if you like earlier we're talking, joking about and this is true because this happened to me twice, where people telling me God's called me to lead worship, but they weren't called to lead worship for my little group, right? And it's funny, right? Because these are also the same guys. These same guys were like, "Oh yeah, God's calling me like to do this for the rest of my life, and this is what I'm going to do. It's going to be my like they were looking at it as this is my job." Well, you know, your calling is not your vocation. Your calling is not your job. And I think we need to take that and we need to crush it and erase it and move it out the way. We do the calling, right? The mission, like Jay was saying, the mission for everyone is the same. The calling underneath that mission is different, but it's your calling to the mission. It's not your job to the mission, right? Which means that if your calling is to preach, but your calling is to preach on Sundays at your little church with your 20, 15, 50 members, right? You're doing the Lord's work. If your calling is to preach to 1,000 people, right? And that's where God directs and leads you. You're doing the Lord's work. But if you're telling me my calling is to preach, or my calling is to do worship, or my college is to work with youth, but whatever, but it's to work with 1,000, because God doesn't want, God wants the best for me, right? So that you're not talking about your calling. That's no longer your calling. You've perverted. Now it might be your calling, but you've perverted your calling. So now it's not about God's calling you. Now it's about what you want to do, and you're using God as the reason to do it. And there's a difference.
Or not do it, right? Or
Or
not do it.
not, or not do it. And there's a huge difference. I think that I believe in all my heart. If you telling me that God has called you to X, Y, or Z, you will take every opportunity to walk in that calling. And then just like people say, you know what, I trust God, just like people say, well, the birds in the air trust God for their provision, then I'm gonna trust God for my provision as I walk in my calling. And if I have to do like Paul and mend tents so I can make some money, so I could eat, so I could continue the mission, that's what I do. Now, if God blesses you and allows you to fall into a position in a place where you can be paid so that you can fully focus on that calling, right? That's going to happen when it's funny how the Bible all ties together, right? How when you've used the little you have and you've been a good steward of that, right? Then you get the blessings. Then you get all the other things that come after it. And guess what? Your blessing might be that you're a pastor of a small bivocational church for 30 years. But when you look back at those 30 years, you see all the pastors that have been launched, all the ministries that have launched. That's your reward. And I think that's how we need to start shifting our thinking. The mission is the same. The mission is one. The callings are different, right?
That's right.
Like I said, the moment you say, well, my calling has to supersede the mission because I got to eat, then it's no longer your calling. You've perverted, you've bastardized it. And so let's all, as we think about and as we talk about the calling God has in my life, then how do we walk that calling in our everyday life in the fulfillment of the mission, not worried about how we get to wherever it is we think we should go, but how do we get to where God wants us to go? That's it. That's all I got, man. I'm done. Mic drop.
All right, so that's the episode for this week. We don't have a title for this because, like I said, we're gonna talk about something else.
Yep.
But we don't want to leave without reminding you of two things. Number one, that you are loved by God, right?
Yeah.
And the Lord loves you, and what we're going through is temporary, right? And number two, just a reminder that this Tuesday is the We Love Christian Music Awards.
Yeah.
Right? Tuesday at 9:00 Eastern, and that will be live online at WeLoveAwards.com. And remember, it's with Newsboys United, Ryan Stevenson, We Are Messengers, among others. We do this for New Release Today because, again, New Release Today, the guy behind that, personal friends of ours. But then it's also a partnership we have because that's where we get, the new music that we share with you guys on the First 30. That other podcast we like to talk about so much, right? So watch the We Love Awards at WeLoveAwards.com this Tuesday, 9 p.m. Eastern. And I hope that what we taught about today resonates with you. And any questions, any prayer requests, just type it up in the comments below. Remember to subscribe so that you know when, and tap on that bell so that you know when our episodes are live, and know that you're loved.
Yeah, and hit us up on Instagram if you guys want to chit chat.
Yep.
So that's it.
Thanks for listening. Remember to go to theoverflowpodcast.com to subscribe to the podcast on all streaming platforms and catch up on all the links of the week. And don't forget to follow our playlist on Spotify.